Hello and welcome to another episode of Casting Views, a random topic podcast hosted by me, Dan.
And me, Lou.
I think that's the intro, Lou.
Yeah,
I think we keep
yeah.
it
I
short
think
and
that's
sweet.
nailed down, to be fair. When you came out with that, a random topic podcast, I was like, sheesh. I was like, he's been
That's it.
practicing.
That's it. I'm clipping that. That's the only thing I've practiced. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Obviously, today we had a sporting event that didn't go our way, didn't we?
Which is quite ironic because we'll say it now. Our episode this week is going to be about sporting fails, excuses, controversies, any one of those. And
Yeah, yeah.
we had a sporting fail today, didn't we?
We did, yeah. We did have a very big sporting foul. As a Spurs fan, we don't really get much joy anyway. And this
Yeah.
weekend probably was possibly the worst weekend of results that we could have possibly asked for. So all of the stars aligned, but against us and for our enemies.
Actually, it's quite ironic because as part of my material this week, I've got ironically something about Spurs and Arsenal in mind. I thought how ironic we'll do it now, but it's just more of a reason for doing it because again, it's something bad that happened to Tottenham and their justification. So it just feels like a never-ending cycle. Rest of the week, okay?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely fine. Very standard. Coming back from the new year, which is nice. Yeah, it's actually been a really good start to 2023, all things considered, I guess.
Yeah, good week, mixed week, good week at work. Tottenham today was bad. Actually, I got something that really annoyed me. I accompanied someone to a hospital appointment this week, and we were in the waiting area, and the consultant rooms went one, two, three, six, no, one, two, three, four, five, six, six and a half, seven, eight. And I don't know what the six and a half. Why is there a six and a half?
Do you reckon? Is it like Is it for wizards?
I don't know. It really annoyed me. I should have asked. I didn't, and now I'm really frustrated.
You
If
need to go
anyone
and see
knows,
your Muggle doctor, and instead of going to platform 9 3/4, you go to room 6.5.
is
Or is
nine
it?
bad luck, so they don't want to go to nine? I
Yeah,
don't know.
very random. That is.
Right, Lou, in a slight change to the way we do things, I'm going to talk about our socials now, just because I had a bit of feedback this week for one of our episodes. So this was the episode 2 weeks ago, marketing fails. And this is from Dan Strange at Running Dan 83 on Twitter. And he has sent a picture of a marketing fail, and this was brilliant. So it was from BlackBerry, and it was saying, keep up with the conversation on Twitter. And it had a picture of them and linked to Instagram. But at the bottom, it said via Twitter for iPhone. It was great.
Just along the same lines of that, what celebrity was it recently that had a deal with like Huawei? And then they were tweeting all of their Huawei promo from Twitter for iPhone, and then all of the tweets got deleted. Was it like Camilla
Oh,
Cabello or someone like that? I can't remember. It was a singer, definitely, but reminds me of that. Yeah.
you just know that, the gut punch they must have felt when they realized that. From the same episode, I had again someone I used to work with, Peated Pete, on Twitter. He just said, "Yeah, great listen, guys. Really interesting. He really enjoyed that, and he is also a Stevenage fan. So I told him to listen out to the episode that went out today because we referenced the Stevenage result.
Oh my god, amazing.
Shall we say that our show is supporting the Stevenage Borough on their cup run?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we can. Yeah, we can commit to that. We can commit to being Stevenage fans in this cut run.
There you go, Pete. If you can tweet Stevenage Borough, for us, let them know we're gonna support them on the run, and we'll cover their results on
Yeah,
this.
whenever they play a game, we'll make sure to give them honourable mention. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. And sorry, one last one. This is for the episode last week. It was from Slade at Slade Play Games, and he mentioned that he had a 3D TV. So this was from our product fails. He said he did have a 3D TV. It's in his workshop now. And he did remind me that the Xbox 360 did 3D at some point because he said if he remembers correctly, Call of Duty Black Ops and Gears of War 3 had 3D modes. He said it was awful.
I can imagine. You know what? It rings a bell, but I can't remember ever using it, so I can't vouch for it. But yeah, it does ring a bell. It does ring a bell.
Yeah, that's what I said to him. I do remember it, but this was probably before I got my 3D TV. Not that based on if you've listened to last week's episode, we would have used it after I got my 3D TV. If you have got feedback, we are at Casting Views on Twitter and castingviewspod@gmail.com if you want to get us via email.
And also, do you know what I was thinking about Stevenage in the cut run? I was just thinking, casting views away day.
There we go. Yeah, Stevenage Borough. Pete, if you're listening, get us tickets.
Yeah, if you can
Hit
get us
us
a
up with
ticket for the
tickets.
game against Stoke, I think it's Stoke, isn't it? If you can get us tickets for the game against Stoke, we'll actually come.
Seriously, I'm saying it now. We are going to be the unofficial, unofficial podcast of Stevenage Borough in the FA Cup. Before we get into the episode, let's hear from good friend of the show, Justin Henson, over at the Movie Wire.
He's on the run from the law, falsely accused of murdering his. Wait. No, got my scripts mixed up here. Here we go. This makes more sense. The Movie Wire Podcast with host Justin Henson. Hear Justin's movie verdict wherever you listen to podcasts. Tune in to The Movie Wire today.
And we're back. So, Lou, I have changed the scope of this a little bit over the week. I think I kept messaging you, but we're kind of, as I mentioned before the break, we are going to talk about sporting fails, controversies, and maybe some funny excuses that have come out of failure, right?
Yeah, I think the caveat that we'll need to put on this for any audience members is that these will probably be like UK focused, I guess. So there'll probably be
Y-
cultural things that kind of relate to stuff that we've personally experienced because I don't keep up with a lot of like American football or baseball or NBA, that sort of stuff. So a lot of these are things that I've either remembered or read about as just being huge scandals.
Yeah, you're right. I've got two UK ones, and then I have got one US based one. That's more
Okay.
of a scandal. So my two UK ones are funny excuses. My US one is a scandal. So I'm going to start with let's do if we've got time. I'm going to do it as a UK US UK sandwich.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So I'm going to start a funny one. Well, I was going to ask if you remember it. Well, you probably wouldn't because it was the year you were born, so you'd be hard pressed to remember it. But this was in April 1996. This was about the funny excuse or reason put for why Man United got a thumping from Southampton. Are you aware of this?
I am. I am.
Football excuses don't get much bigger than Man United changing their kit at halftime against Southampton. Now, this was obviously in Man United's glory days.
Yeah. This was Eric Cantona days, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were a bloody good side, right? And this was obviously Sir Alex Ferguson as well, who's still a legend, right, in the game. So on the 13th of April, 96, the Red Devils travelled to the Dell, having won 11 of their previous 12 Premier League games, to overhaul Newcastle at the top of the table. Relegation threatened Saints produced a memorable performance against the seemingly unstoppable United. Southampton went 3-0 up, but the game is famous for an angry Sir Alex Ferguson making his team change from their grey kits at the break, as he claimed it was making it difficult for his players to see each other in the bright sunshine. So I don't know if you've seen it or if anyone at home, but yeah, they were playing in this really weird grey kit instead of their usual red. When they came out in the second half, they were in a totally different kit. United changed to a blue and white kit, but that still couldn't inspire them to a comeback as they still lost 3-1. I guess they won the second half 1-0.
They did win the second half. Yeah. Yeah.
The players don't like the grey strip, manager Ferguson said at the time. The players couldn't pick each other out. They said it was difficult to see their teammates at a distance when they lifted their heads. It's nothing to do with superstition. Now, one of the reasons I included as well, I found this little bit interesting, which I hadn't heard before. Now, Gary Neville, who actually played for United that day, said it wasn't quite as simple as his boss deciding to change tactics. It was more to do with science. Now, they have someone called a vision specialist employed, which I hadn't heard before. So, a vision specialist called Gail Stevenson from Liverpool Uni would come in twice a week to the club, he explained. She actually said to Sir Alex, this was a detail that they would go into. Imagine you've got a crowd behind you. There are colours you can see quicker than others, and those that stand out more than others. It's obvious. The reason people wear bright yellow on a motorway is so people can see them. People don't wear grey on a motorway. She said to him, this is not right. The players will not pick out the grey shirts in a crowded atmosphere as quickly as the other ones. This is something that had been going on for months. He'd rejected this kit a couple of months before. He was not having it all. The vision specialist then started to work with kit manufacturers on how to make our kits stand out the most. There was a bit more science behind it than the gaffer didn't like the kit, and that's the reason why we were losing. So yeah, I thought I kicked that off with that. That the reason they were losing was because of a football top, a grey
Now,
kit.
I can say, if you've seen the shirt, right, and you go and Google it, it is an awful football shirt, and I've never seen really any other clubs play it in a grey colour in the way it was. So I can imagine that against the backdrop of a crowd who are all probably wearing jackets, because I can't remember when the fixture was played, but it's never warm really in England anyway. So people
Yeah,
have
it was
jackets on when you go
April.
to football.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So it's never going to be warm. I imagine against the backdrop of that, it is probably a little bit difficult to pick players out. So I know that Gary Neville had done that interview afterwards and said it wasn't just a thing that happened on the day. It was a thing that they consciously thought about because they actually did have spare kits ready. And that's the thing.
yeah.
I think that I would be less inclined to believe it if they'd have just changed into like a training top or something like that and asked the referee permission to do that. But they actually had spare kits, full kits on standby just in case. And that's a little bit strange to me, obviously. So I think there's a lot of legitimacy to it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so, and I think having that in the back of your mind now, yeah, you can pick it up. I mean, you do wonder though how much of it is also mental. So when they come out the second half and they've changed, does it affect the opponents that they've
Yeah.
done something different, or does it give you more confidence? Now, there's a couple of things at play. The opponent's already winning 3-0, so they probably took their foot off the brake a little. Man United at the time were Man United and they were top, right? And they'd won 11 out of 12. So was that just a psychological thing to kick them in the arse and then just play better?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, statistically, there is actually science behind the whole football shirt thing, just generally. I mean, I can't remember if it was Tifo Football or Athletic Interest, both amazing YouTube channels, by the way, would definitely check them out. But one of them did a video on statistical probability of victory depending on what color a team wears. So they found that red was the most successful team color, along with bright blue, and that white, being Spurs fans, is one of the worst.
Yeah.
And again, it's all about what like emotion that the color invokes in the opposition and how easily it stands out, and all of these factors. But statistically, there is a difference in football shirt color as well. So you know, it's something that can't be like snubbed because like science.
Or is it just that bad teams play in a certain colour and
Yeah,
that's what?
just bad
Yeah.
teams just have shit shirt manufacturers. That's might be what the problem is.
Yeah, and can you imagine if you forked out 80 quid for that kit, then they took it off at half time because it was that bad for them? Yeah, that never to be seen again, and
Yeah,
you just paid 80 quid.
literally worn once and then never again, and that's it. I think it's a bit of a collector's item now because it was so rare and not many people picked it up at the time. It is a hilarious story as well. But again, like I said, they won the second half as well, so there was probably something in
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
To be fair, but again, it's a little bit like what you say. Again, psychologically, has it just done something to the United players to turn around and like you say, to kick their asses into gear to think right? We've got rid of what we thought the problem was now, and psychologically, it's just presenting a change in the way that they've played, and they've just come out and played better football. Yeah, it could also be that as well. I think it was probably all of those factors, to be honest. But yeah, it's a brilliant,
And
brilliant
probably
story.
Ferguson gave him a right rollicking because he was
Yeah,
known for that. So
if you look at shirts nowadays, how many times do you see football clubs now playing in like bright fluorescent shirts? Like we see it in the
yeah,
Premier League. Man
yeah,
City have got bright fluorescent colours. All of the away colours are usually some sort of bright fluorescent colour. Everton played in bright pink for a period of time, didn't they? Leicester
yeah.
played in pink. So yeah, there's probably been a change over like the last 20 years in the way that people are looking at it. But I just think yeah, brilliant masterstroke. If Fergie's meant that and he's done all the science behind it, absolute genius. If he's just turned around and used it as an excuse, it's still absolutely genius. So either
Yeah, either
way,
way, he comes out as a
yeah,
genius.
he does, doesn't he?
So I thought I'd start with a quick one. I remembered the game and I just thought, yeah, what a perfect example of a funny excuse or an unusual excuse for losing a game. So yeah, a badly coloured football shirt was the reason why they lost. Over to you.
Right, I'm going to start off with a slightly serious one, and mine are going to get lighter and lighter as we go along. So,
Okay. Okay.
this is the scandal of the 2000 Paralympic basketball gold medal. So, in the Sydney 2000 Games, Spain's Paralympic basketball team won the gold medal. It just turns out, I don't. Do you know anything about this? Just prior to going any further.
No, no.
Okay, so it turns out Spain's Paralympic basketball team won the gold medal. However, it later emerged that 10 of the 12 team, 10 of the 12 players weren't actually disabled at all in
Oh,
any
come on.
capacity.
Come on.
So, the former head of Spain's governing body of sports for athletes with intellectual disabilities at the time said, and even still to this day says, that he knew nothing. So, the athletes that were pretending to be disabled basically pretended on the basis that they had intellectual disabilities. So obviously at the time, I guess it's just more difficult to put people through the test because if your Spanish federation has said, yep, they have this particular disability, I guess there's no reason for the Olympic Committee to doubt it. However, 10 of them didn't. They beat the Russian counterparts to win the gold medal. And then behind the scenes, there were investigations that took place because there were suspicions that were raised around the team just generally. So a journalist was actually the first one to blow the whistle on the team's cheating, and it wasn't actually long after the win. 10 fake Paralympians were amongst 19 people to be charged relating to the scheme. And the president, who's actually since done interviews on this, Fernando Martin Vicente, was among those subject to criminal charges. However, he accepted full responsibility in 2013. It meant that the charges against the 18 other defendants were dropped. So he basically turned around and said, "It was
Okay,
my scheme.
okay.
I was the one that orchestrated it, and I was the one that made them do it." Basically. However, since then, he's given an interview and he said that he denied any involvement in the plot and he labelled the allegations as absurd. So whilst he turned around and took the fall for the team, he's then later come out and said, "No, it was all nonsense. I didn't know anything about it." It was very, very strange, very, very strange. And also, I just think to myself, why would you like what particular sport? Because then does it not delegitimize any medal that Spain has won at that Paralympic Games? Because I'd then be looking at all of the athletes.
It does, yeah, of course it does.
It actually had such a profound effect that for the next two Paralympic Games, athletes with intellectual disabilities weren't allowed to compete. So that's how big the effect was. The
Yeah,
Olympic Committee was so scared of this happening again that they actually turned around and said, "We don't even want athletes with intellectual disabilities competing because we don't want this situation again." They later rescinded the decision, obviously, but for that's 8 years potentially that
yeah.
you've trained your entire life, and one Spanish basketball team's decision to cheat has now ruined every other nation's chances of their athletes going to the Paralympic Games. I think it's utterly nuts, to be honest with you.
Firstly, it is absolutely outrageous. I mean, the thing is, how desperate were they for Olympic medals? I mean, that they had to blatantly lie and cheat like that.
Yeah.
And secondly, you said, does it make you question the other ones they've won? I think naturally it probably would, but does it then also make all the other teams? Did people maybe start potentially questioning other teams and start saying, if a
Yeah.
team did particularly well or something? Did they? It's Yeah, it's just it's just so wrong, isn't it, on so many levels?
And do you know what one of the saddest things about this story is? Is one of the people most directly affected by the ban afterwards was actually the captain of the Spanish team in Sydney 2000, which was Ramon Torres. And he was actually one of the two players who did genuinely have a disability. So he had to hand back his gold medal, and apparently he questioned people in the team at the time who didn't appear to have any disability, and he was just told by the hierarchy, "Don't worry, there's no issue here." So the captain of the team was one of the ones that got done over. And again, all for what? The gold. Like, I understand you want to win gold, but it's very strange. It's very strange. No need for it. And again, at the Paralympics, it's like the pinnacle of Paralympic sport is the Paralympics. You've got to be really brazen to try and cheat at these events. Like, we've seen doping and
That,
drug scandals, but for that, you've literally just put up athletes that haven't got a disability. It's crazy to me.
that's exactly it. I mean, how bad they're devaluing. But what I would like to know, and it's probably not something you've got there, is I wonder, did they necessarily win everything they competed in, or did they not? So, do you see what I'm trying to say? So the fully abled people, did they actually win every event they were in, or did
Oh, right. So
they?
I think that this specific group of players was only put together for the 2000 Paralympic Games.
There is two sets of Olympics. If those players are good enough, did they just think that they were? I don't know.
I don't know if it's a thing of like they were athletes and they were gifted at what they did, but they turned around and said, "Well, we will have an advantage by being fully abled athletes at the Paralympic Games." And if that's just the way that they've turned around and looked at it and said, "That's our way to glory." And like I said, the Spanish hierarchy in terms of their sporting federations must have had something to do with it because the president must have known. Like, how could you have got through all of the sifting that would have had to have been done to prove any of these disabilities without somebody turning around and turning a blind eye? So I don't know whether or not it's just personal glory, but it must have been like a want for glory of like the Spanish team because otherwise it wouldn't have been
Yeah.
allowed, would it? It's
Well,
strange.
you could say potentially, could the president say he honestly didn't know because he's just a figurehead at the top of it? But I don't believe that. And also, there have to be to have like 10 of the 12 or whatever. It would need a number of officials to be in on it.
Yeah.
But secondly, also, players themselves, don't have they not got a conscience?
Yeah,
Oh, well,
exactly.
obviously not.
Again,
Obviously not.
yeah, this is the thing again. When you're looking at it, like you've evidently been asked or invited to take part. At no point have you ever questioned it, and at no point have you ever raised any issues. So to me, again, it's just a scummy thing all round. And like I said, the only victims in this were the two teammates who genuinely had disabilities,
Yeah,
who then had
that's
to hand their
bad.
gold medals back. It's just a
Yeah,
crazy situation. Yeah, very very weird scandal, very very terrible scandal in reality. And like I said, kind of rocked the sport because then you look at the ripple effect that it had in the fact that then athletes with intellectual disabilities being banned for the next two tournaments. That's the
yeah,
ripple effect
yeah,
that one single team had. It's kind of like bringing the whole sport into disrepute, and that's really, and it brought the Paralympics into disrepute in reality.
yeah.
And yeah, that's yeah, it's just a crap situation all round.
Bang out of order, basically.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I promise they get lighter from now on.
Yeah, sorry, and I'm just thinking about that. I wonder if there have been other instances, and maybe if they've just got away with, if,
Yeah.
like you said, if it's a basketball team, that's a lot of one specific unit. But if they were liberally sprinkling individuals throughout the events, could they have got away with it? Sorry, did you say how it came to light?
So there was a journalist list that started poking
Oh,
around and
that's it. Yep.
investigating, and then he found out that some of the athletes didn't have disabilities. Then it went to tribunals and stuff where medical records needed to be pulled out, and none of them had any fucking medical records,
Yeah.
obviously. So yeah,
So
yeah. Honestly,
see,
it's
it's
crap.
always the journalists. We need these like the Gizmondo last week,
Yeah.
discovering the mafia. It's the journalists that when they do things like this, good jobs. Right. I'm going to try and talk about American football now.
you mean you
So,
mean hand egg?
hand egg, yeah. So for our American friends and anyone who's into football, I apologise now for my lack of experience and knowledge on this. But it was just something that was floating around in the back of my head. And I didn't realise it was actually it's going to be 8 years old now. This article was actually on the 25th of January 2015. So it was Deflategate. So are you aware of Deflategate?
I've heard, can't remember detail. This is
I
probably
think
something that I've seen in like a YouTube top 10.
Yeah, I guess just from the word, you could probably guess what it is, but I didn't quite know exactly what it was about. So I found this article on the BBC quite handily. For those who missed it, let's start at the very beginning. In a nutshell, the NFL was investigating claims that the Patriots may have deflated match balls to give themselves an advantage in their 45-7 win over Indianapolis that sent them to the Super Bowl. According to reports, 11 of the 12 game balls they provided for the rain affected matchup were underinflated by about £2 per square inch. Then, when I was researching this, I was thinking, but what's that got to do with anything? I would have thought that wouldn't be so good for them if they're deflating it. But it's not, because it was raining that day, and that's important because if you deflate a ball in cold or wet conditions, it provides more grip for the quarterback, in this case Tom Brady, to grab hold of rather than
Right.
a hard, slippery ball, as it were. In a statement, the NFL said initial evidence thus far supports the conclusion that underinflated footballs were used by the Patriots in the first half, but were properly inflated for the second half. However, the Patriots denied any wrongdoing and immediately after the game and throughout the week. Then again, I was thinking, but surely if you deflate a ball, isn't it the same for both teams, right? And there is a heading here. So if the balls are deflated, did both teams gain an advantage? Strangely, no. Now, this is a bit I didn't know. Both teams supply their own balls for each game. So the Colts quarterback, Andrew Luck, used his own.
Ah.
Yeah. 12 balls are presented to the referee by both teams 2 hours, 15 minutes before the game. NFL rules on the types of ball to be used are very specific. The ball must be a Wilson, hand selected, bearing the signature of the commissioner of the league. It then continues, the ball should be made up of an inflated urethane bladder enclosed in a pebble grained leather case, natural tan colour, without corrugations of any kind. It shall have the form of a prolate spheroid, and the size and weight shall be long axis 11 to 11 and a quarter inches, long circumference 28 to 28 and a half inches, and it goes on and on. So basically, very, very specific regulations for the ball. The referee shall be the sole judge as to whether all balls offered for play comply with these specifications. So, final line of that particular rule states that a pump is to be furnished by the home club, and the ball shall remain under the supervision of the referee until they are delivered to the ball attendant just prior to the start of the game. And this is how there's a possible window of opportunity to deflate them before the first quarter. The league, the Friday after, said that it could not yet determine whether the deflations were the result of deliberate action, and certainly no one is pointing fingers at any ball attendants. So, yeah, did deflated balls really make a difference? It's a fair question. It's worth remembering that the Patriots scored 17 points in the first half when, according to the NFL, the balls were below their optimum pressure. 28 points were piled on by Brady and co. after them when the balls had been reinflated. So the fact that 17 points were scored in the first half and 28 in the second doesn't quite stack up that there's a massive advantage, does it?
No, no.
I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't got sort of anything more up to date on that, but I just found that a fascinating thing about potentially accusing a team of deflating a ball. So what's your what's your view on
Now,
that?
right, can we just say, right, whoever the governing body is that creates these rules, because we've got like the FA and the Premier League in England for football or soccer, why do they fucking let them bring their own balls? Like, what kind of rule is that to begin with? You wouldn't see a team in the Premier League turning up, be like, "Hi, we've brought our own balls. Could you just let us know that they're good enough?" That to me just seems like you could get away with just preventing this whole situation entirely if you just didn't allow them to bring their own balls. Why don't the league supply them? Very strange to me.
Exactly, and giving them a pump beforehand as well. Like you said, yeah, it should be. You'd think it should be independent, right?
Yeah, this is what I mean. Like, there should be somebody just testing them and being like, no, this is the ball that you're going to play with. We've pumped them all up to X PSI. This is what you're getting given. It's very, very strange. It's kind of like, I understand why boxers choose their own gloves because they like particular brands, they like how particular brands feel, but they still have to agree that they're going to fight with particular gloves. Whereas there's just no tangible reason in my mind, because when all of the balls need to fit that's really specific criteria about them being tan and this particular color and no corrugation,
Yeah, yeah.
why are we giving them a choice anyway? Because they even have to be the same brand, which makes no sense to me. Yeah, it makes no sense to me. Very, very strange to begin with. Also, I guess from the aspect of cheating, it's only going to be you that technically has your hands on that ball as a reason, as a result of you bringing your own ones. So I can kind of understand why they've chosen to deflate them in those conditions.
Yeah.
But yeah, barring that, very strange.
Yeah, I've got just a little addition for so this was actually from January 2022, so last year. Basically, they said so there was a 253-page report from the league found the Patriots at fault. Brady was alleged to be at least generally aware of a plot to deflate the footballs. He was eventually suspended for the first 4 games of the 2016 season, while the team was handed a $1 million fine and lost 2 draft picks. Brady repeatedly denied all accusations. And I think I saw that it said, yeah, there's a stipulation now that the ball can be at any random point in time, any game, the ball can be taken away by the NFL at halftime and tested. Again, it just feels a bit too late.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's just something that could be prevented at point A, and instead of preventing it at point A, we just allow the opportunity for people to cheat. It's very strange. It's a little bit like, do you know, bat scandals in baseball, where like a bat breaks and they've like put cork in the middle to
Oh
make it
right,
more
yeah, yeah,
bouncy. It's like instances like that. Why don't we just give them the bats to use? This is the standard one. This is the brand that you have to use. I don't care if you like your own one. You're bringing these ones. It's very weird. Like, why are we changing the the equipment to like suit the players when the players should be training with what we give them? Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It just opens yourself up to so many difficult situations.
yeah. I'm just thinking in football. Can you imagine if like Wayne Rooney suddenly before the game said, "Oh yeah, no, I've just got to go in the locker room," and you see him huddled in the corner with a pump in the in the football deflating it a little bit. I don't know. Could a ball? No, I guess a ball couldn't naturally deflate during the game, could it? Or unless it was a massive weather shift or temperature shift or something, could it? It wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah, this is the thing. Unless there's like some strange act of God that's all of a sudden sucking the air from all of the egg-shaped footballs in the world. Yeah, very, very strange.
And on that, I didn't know that each team used their own balls.
Yeah, yeah,
So one, if they're all supposed to be the same to the nth degree, why have your own ones? Because they should feel the same and
yeah,
move the same. And secondly, yeah, if that rule wasn't in existence, they would have known literally within the 5 minute or the turnover of after the fourth down or whatever, because
exactly.
I don't know. Am I saying that right? Is it the turnover of play or something? I mean, I watched the Super Bowl, so I know roughly the mechanics of the game. But yeah, in the
Me,
turnover, they would have known, right?
me and Dan have absolutely no idea what we're talking about. Is the Super Bowl like in a couple of weeks' time as well? I'm not sure. Is it in February time?
Yeah, it's February. That's one game I do. I love watching the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, but here you have to remember it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm
Oh, I
sorry,
don't
guys.
stay up for it. I don't
Yeah,
stay up for it.
I'm sorry to all of the Americans listening to this, but holy shit, it takes so long. Like it lasts like 3 hours. I remember once going to our student union at university, and we just went and got drunk and watched the Super Bowl. I was literally at home before it even finished because I was like, how have I been out on a drinking session and not lasted the length of this game?
Well, I think it starts about 10 or half 10 here. But the game actually starts around 11:30, something, maybe midnight, and it finishes around 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I mean,
Yeah.
must be a brilliant event to go to because you get your money's worth,
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, here you go to a football game, you pay £100 for a ticket, and the ball's only in play for 57 minutes of the 90. So yeah, I guess the American
Yeah,
football
yeah.
is more of an actual event as opposed to what we get here. But yeah,
And the advantage of watching it next day is you can fast forward a lot of it.
yeah. This is all of the ads and the crap performance from the inevitable washed up superstar that does their performance at the beginning. Although apparently it's Rihanna this year, but she hasn't been around very much in recent years. Yeah,
Was it last year where it was Eminem? Was it Snoop Dogg? I think it
I
was
think.
Dre, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
That was really good. Yeah, like I said, I love the Super Bowl. I know quite a few people that will stay up. They have the Super Bowl parties. But we're getting on a tangent here. Stop deflating the balls or don't deflate your balls, all right? That's bad, it's cheating. So, yeah.
Right, now, moving on from that one, I've got a story that's been, or a scandal, in fact, that's been brought about in recent news again. So, I don't know if you know who Yusufa Makoko is.
No.
So, he's a Borussia Dortmund football player, one of the most highly rated prospects in world football, to be honest with you. Plays for the Germany national team. Or he's living in Germany, I think, at the moment. So I don't know if he's declared for either one,
Oh,
either
I
Cameroon
think
or.
German.
Oh yeah, I think we're right. I think we're right. So he's 18 years old or documented. However, it's now being claimed that a birth certificate dated for the year 2000 has been found with the name Yusufa Mohamedou, with reports in Germany believing it to be belonging to the Cameroon born Borussia Dortmund striker. So apparently, it's his adoptive father that sent the birth certificate to a journalist. So he's being reported as being 18 currently, and his official birth certificate, the one that the German Football Association has on record, lists his date of birth as November 20th, 2004. So officially, he's noted as being 18. However, obviously this scandal hasn't concluded yet because we still don't know. However, there is a long list of age fraud in football. So if you look, and this is kind of cross continental, famously in Europe. So this is regarding Alf Ramsey,
All
obviously
right.
huge English footballing legend. He was manager with England, wasn't he, when they won the
Yeah.
World Cup in '66? So apparently, in Alf Ramsey, he there was a journalist called Dave Bowler who wrote the book "Winning Isn't Everything," a biography of Sir Alf Ramsey, and it claims that Alf Ramsey forged his documents that his date of birth changed from 1920 to 1922 because he feared that come at the end of the Second World War, he'd be considered too old to be offered a professional footballing contract. So
Oh,
this dates
okay.
back now years because obviously that was in the 1920s, and then there's obviously been huge examples. I think there was always scandal and rumor about was it Carnu, the one that played for Arsenal, about him being like 45, and then there was the Lazio player
The
who was in their
Lazio
youth
one is the
ranks
one
at
that
like 14. But I'm not joking. This guy looks about 45. It is unbelievable. But yeah, there've been loads of instances. So strangely, Cameroon are one of the nations that pop up quite a lot. And there's been lots of instances of Cameroon players either being suspended or refused to play for their under 17 teams. Again, very, very common thing. And I think that with respect to age, it's because when you can ship players off and you can report them as being younger than they are, their value obviously goes up because if they're a fantastic talent, so this Makoku now, if he's 18 and he's as talented as he is, all of a sudden his value is astronomical. If all of a sudden you turn around and tell me that he's 22 and he's talented, all of a sudden that value drops because the potential that he has now to get any better is a little bit more limited because what kind of
yeah,
upper echelon has he got compared to being an 18-year-old? Because obviously at 18, your body's not even fully grown yet. You still grow until you're about 21. So
exactly.
you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
physically not even in your peak. But yeah, very strange scandal. Do you want to know how it's being combated now?
I'd love to know.
FIFA introduced in 2009 MRI scans. And this is because it's MRI scans are considered to be 99% accurate at determining age until the age of 17. So basically, an MRI scan can tell whether a person is less than 17 years old, because after 17, it becomes really difficult to calculate a person's age based on any scans or bone density. So it's just coincidence that it's under 17 level, which is what FIFA competitions are, in which you can
Right.
basically establish. So the way it works is that every bone in the arm and leg has an end plate from which bone grows. And when the growth is completed, usually at the age of 17 or 18, the end plate disappears on the MRI scans. And so they don't show up.
Okay.
So you know a person is older. So apparently there's about a 1% failure rate in terms of whether or not they're accurate. And then there's loads of criteria for what you need to find on an MRI scan to have a player be officially able to compete at under 17 level. So there was a couple of statistics. So of the 429 MRIs conducted by the Asian Football Confederation in 2007, 10 players, or 2.7%, were found to be over the age of 16 years in an otherwise under 15 tournament. And in 2008, one out of the 116 MRIs conducted had full fusion of that bone. So that's only a point, like 1% failure. However, not all associations were pleased to see the introduction of MRIs. So Nigeria lost 15 players after they were proven to be over age and were basically disqualified. And then again, there's a load of examples across the African confederations, Asian confederations, European confederations, and American confederations. So it feels like everybody's trying to use adults in youth games for some reason.
So it's not so much trying to cheat in the senior teams, it's about cheating the system in the youth games.
Yeah, and I imagine at some point being able to inflate fees for your home confederation. There's a very, very interesting one, and this was an Ecuadorian footballer. So their real name was Angel Sheme, who played the majority of their professional career as Gonzalo Chila, which was the name of a real player, just 3 years younger, and they both met when they had trials at a local club. And it basically allowed him to play in age-restricted matches for 3 years after he was entitled to do so. So he played 3 years for basically what would have been like under 18 level until he was 21. So at that point, he is a fully grown man playing against what is basically kids. It's really, really strange.
He reminds me of, have you seen that program on Amazon Prime, Sneaky Pete?
No, I haven't.
It's brilliant. Watch it. But it's about a guy in prison who gets out, then has to hide. So he pretends he's his cellmate. His cellmate told him everything about his life. So he goes to his like family he hasn't seen for years and pretends to be this guy. And it's just like that. He's had these trials with this other guy and he's taken on his persona.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And again, like I said, very scary about how common this thing actually is in
Yeah,
modern day
yeah.
football. If you look in the year 2000, 16 players were banned by the Asian Football Confederation, and 8 were banned in the 2010 under 16 European Championships for being above age. But yeah, it's only because the recent story of the Borussia Dortmund forward came out, and like I said, the lead that they've got on it potentially being sent from what is his adopted father or stepfather is crazy, knowing that ultimately he could be 22 when he's been purported as being 17, just turned 18. But
Can
yeah,
you
I
really get
don't know.
away with it? 'Cause at some point, surely if they then sort of make it to the senior team, I mean, do you suddenly have a glut of players who have to retire really early, like at 26, because their body can't cope anymore at 26, but they're really 38 or something?
Yeah, this is what I mean, because obviously at the beginning of your career, it doesn't make much of a difference to you because, yeah, fair enough, you're getting through the system. But all of a sudden, when you hit 30 and you're 34, that 4 years is a big difference when you're in the
Yeah,
professional
yeah.
leagues. You know, you look at the way that a 25-year-old will perform versus, a 34-year-old in that league. There's a big jump. And if you're turning around and taking 4 years, 5 years on that age, you're going to look much, much more unfit than the rest of the players around you. You know, not everybody's a Cristiano Ronaldo who goes until he's 45 looking like a 22-year-old. But yeah, very, very strange. Again, something that's been combated with medical examinations and that sort of thing. But I would imagine that there are probably still instances of this happening right now. And like I said, we've got one actively in the media. So it'd be good to see how this concludes and whether or not it is proven that he is 18 or in fact 22. Be an interesting story to keep a hold of.
The Lazio player one is the one that sticks out because that was years ago. That was kind of more in my memory. Now, the difficulty is you can't just look at a person because looks really can be deceiving. But I just remember he did look like he was in his 30s and they were trying to pass him off as a teen.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to look this Lazio player up, his name's Joseph Minala. So the Italian FA confirmed that he was 17, but it's reported that he was 42. Now, if you do look at images of the guy, he does look old, if we're being honest. There's pictures of
Yeah, yeah.
him as 17. He looks like a fully grown man, like he could have 3 kids and a mortgage. That's genuinely the way he looks. So we'll let everybody be the judge. I mean, again, I remember it being a huge scandal at the time as well.
Are you saying then? Do you think with kind of all the documentation, although that can be falsified, I know that in the modern day with information overload, do you think it is? Is it a point where you can't get away with this anymore
I
because
think
there's too much documented?
Yeah, I think that that's where we're going. I think, like I said, the federations are now introducing systems to turn around and prevent this from happening. And I do think it's much more difficult. But ultimately, there, in particular places in the world, there is just worse record keeping. Like, especially if you'd have gone back to that period where Kanu would have played football, documents would have been paper 30 years earlier when he was born in, like the 60s or 70s. So as a result, document keeping just isn't as good. When you look at anybody who might be 80 years old, they've got birth certificates, but they're all rough pieces of paper written down handwriting. So who's to know in
I
reality?
have a paper birth certificate and I'm not 80. Just
Yeah,
saying.
well, exactly. If people your age, bloody hell,
My age.
Dan's going on trial for Spurs under 18s.
I'll probably do a job as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, currently.
Yeah, I guess, and it's all you can falsify it anyway, can't you? You know, in this day and age. So yeah,
Yeah,
so
very interesting one.
cheating, making older players younger just to cheat.
Yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Promise my next
Unbelievable.
two are just much more funny instances of just things that happen during sport.
I've just got the one more, and again, well, I call it slightly humorous, but I'm not in the mood to do it now. I was debating whether to do it. So we had the North London derby where Arsenal beat Tottenham. And we're going to go back to 2006 for what was affectionately known as Lasagna Gate. So you know this, don't you?
I do indeed, yeah.
Now, this is bad for two reasons. One, because obviously our team suffered because of this, but two, also I love lasagna and it's associated with a painful memory now. So, in 2006, Tottenham were a point ahead of Arsenal. They knew a win would see them qualify for the Champions League. They stayed at the London Marriott West India Quay Hotel in Canary Wharf the night before the game. Overnight, and here we go, listen to these names, a blast from the past. Overnight, Edgar Davids,
Oh
Timu
God.
Taino, Robbie Keane, Michael Dawson, Michael Carrick, Aaron Lennon, Radic Cherney, Callum Davenport, Lee Barnard, Tom Huddleston, and Lee Young Pyo were all said to be taken ill. Around 10 members of the squad informed the club doctor that they had endured an extremely rough night, with a number of them being violently sick. The players had eaten at a buffet dinner in a private room. Many of the players were said to have helped themselves to the lasagna, which was one of the food options. I was in a bad way, Davenport told The Athletic in 2020. I remember waking up at 5 a.m. thinking, I never wake up for the toilet or anything. What's wrong here? I got on the toilet, had my head in the sink and my backside on the toilet, and well, it wasn't pretty. I couldn't get off the toilet, so I rang the team doctor and explained how I felt. I was told, Callum, you're not the only one. I've had other people on the phone as well. I was given something to make me feel a bit better and then went down to breakfast. Carrick wrote in his biography in 2018, I'd never endured agony like this. It was like a fire in my guts with petrol poured on it again and again. The pain kept flaring up, and I curled up in bed praying for it to pass. Spurs pushed for a postponement to the game, but it wasn't possible. Despite opponents West Ham being happy to delay the game, Tottenham's players were clearly affected by their illness and lost the game 2-1. Arsenal beat Wigan 4-2, which meant they qualified ahead of Spurs. What I'll say just before we go on, what's changed? So basically, after that, they start saying now that they take two chefs to away games to kind of help oversee some of the meals that are prepared. It says here, does it protect against the same situation happening? No. After the loss to West Ham in 2006, Spurs made their players provide urine and stool samples. And this is funny. I could go into this, but ultimately, this guy's never one of these players never provided a stool sample, so it was really funny his reaction to having to provide one and how it's done. But we won't go into that. Basically, it was then turned out that the only positive finding from the investigation had been one positive sample, which showed norovirus, which is a form of gastroenteritis, which is common in the winter anyway.
Yeah.
So the hotel was cleared of any wrongdoing, with the accepted wisdom being that it was a highly contagious virus, most likely to blame. Now, again, it's not great. I mean, we laugh, at that player was obviously in a lot of discomfort, and we've all been there, right? But why I picked this is there probably was a legitimate virus, but it was the fact that they were blaming it on the lasagna, and that's what it became known as, Lasagna Gate. And it was just, come on, just it's like, so you've lost because of a pasta dish.
Do you know what's really funny is like there were rumors that like the hotel had been infiltrated by like Arsenal
Arsenal,
fans,
yeah,
and that someone was
yeah,
an Arsenal fan behind the scenes and it had intentionally poisoned the dish, which I think was hilarious. But again, all of them did fall in at the same time. So was it just a bug, or was there foul play involved? I mean, we can't ever prove it. I reckon the Spurs players would turn around and say that nothing ever hit their camp previously like that. And given the nature of how important the game was, we've seen fans turn around and set off fireworks outside of team hotels, haven't we?
yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
common thing. Like you go to an away game, there's a team staying in a hotel, and people will set off fireworks in the street to wake them up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So is it beyond the realm of possibility? I don't think it is. But again, it's all speculation.
Yeah, for those who don't know Tottenham, though, however, we are accused of being Spursy, which means we bottle it at the any opportunity we can, and it just smacks of that, doesn't it? The last game needing to win, and then dodgy lasagna. Yeah, and like I said, that's what it is. Instead of just saying, "Look, we've had a virus run through," it was trying to blame that, or it made it look like somebody in the camp was trying to blame the hotel.
Yeah, 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 I think so. Rather than them just being shit.
So just come out and say, "Look, we've got illness." It happens, right? But no, it's trying to make it seem like somebody was out to sabotage them. We'll never know, or will we? Or we'll never know. So yes, the humble lasagna nobbled Spurs in 2006.
Right, staying with football, and I've got two very quick ones. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to give you the date of when the game was played and the two teams. I want to ask you if you can remember what this was about. So it's the 17th of October 2009, and Liverpool are playing Sunderland at the Stadium of Light. Darren Bent.
No, 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 I don't know.
So this is the day that the beach ball scored for
Ah,
Sunderland.
yes, 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 I do. Yeah, go on, brilliant.
So basically, Sunderland are playing Liverpool, and obviously, even at the time, I mean, Liverpool had a little bit of a rough period in that kind of late 2000s, early 2010s, didn't they? But Liverpool have gone to Sunderland to play a game, and there was only one goal that game, and it was scored by Sunderland's Darren Bent. However, the nature of the goal being scored. So Darren Bent strikes the ball from just inside the box. In reality, the ball, as it's careering towards the goal, bounces off of a beach ball. The beach ball goes one way, and the ball, whilst the Liverpool goalkeeper is stood there, basically just hops over the Liverpool goalkeeper's shoulder, goes in, and it's declared a goal. Obviously, nothing like this had really ever happened before. We hadn't seen interference from like a foreign object on a football pitch, I don't think, ever. Everybody celebrated. The Liverpool players protested, and the referee basically said, "Tough shit, it's gone in. What are we supposed to do?" It was made worse by the fact that it was a Liverpool beach ball. And the footage came out afterwards that it was a young Liverpudlian fan who had actually taken one of the beach balls from the away end and basically hit it onto the pitch. So it sat in front of Pepe Reina, and that was the goal that decided Liverpool versus Sunderland. It was a huge scandal, obviously, about like foreign objects on football pitches, whether it should have stood, whether it shouldn't. But the thing is, it did, and it was also a Liverpool fan that did the sabotaging. I actually remember when this was replayed on the news that they actually blanked the Liverpool supporters' face out because they didn't want them to be identified, just in case they had
So you
like
could
faced
actually
a
see it
retribution.
happen. That they actually saw it on
Yeah,
camera.
you can see the fan just ping the beach ball up and then pop it onto like he's giving a volleyball serve, and then the ball stays on the pitch. And at that moment in time, when Darren Beck made that strike, and it's funny as well because the BBC article that I'm reading has turned around and said Sunderland won, Liverpool nil, and then he credited the goal as Bent slash beach ball.
That's brilliant. I do remember that. That's a classic. And yeah, I guess you got to say it should be allowed because you've either got to stop the play when a foreign object is on
Yeah,
the pitch, or if it's allowed to play on, then it's down to the keeper to clear his box, because it could
it is.
equally have stopped a goal, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It just would have been luck of the day because Sunderland would have been just as begrudged had that beach ball knocked the ball off target and sent it careering out wide. But yeah, hilariously funny moment because we've seen before with balloons and stuff and goalkeepers popping balloons. But again, it's like everything aligned that day to bring about the worst possible outcome for Liverpool. But yeah, I remember at the time it just being a very, very funny, and that's more of a footballing fail.
Very much a pub quiz question, isn't
It
it, as
is, yeah,
well?
yeah. Who scored? What teams and what year was the beach ball responsible for scoring the goal or something like that? Moving on to my last one. This is
Sorry,
more like a
at that time, probably Beach Ball was the top scorer for Sunderland,
yeah, yeah,
probably.
probably would have been. Yeah, don't know if that's the season they
Sorry,
went down.
Sunderland
Yeah.
fans. Yeah.
Last one that I've got is less an actual sporting fail and more so a sports star fail. So this one's funny because it's relating to teams. So obviously we know that Manchester City in the late 2000s were taken over by Qatar. I think was it Qatar or was it the UAE? I can't
I
remember
think it's
what which one.
UAE.
Yeah,
Yeah.
UAE owners, hugely rich. I think 25 billion quid is what they're worth. And obviously, they began a splurge of signing huge named players. Now, if you remember, Robinho was one of them. The same Robinho who's in prison or was charged in Italy for particular crimes, but it's probably another story for another day. However, the reason that this is a fail is because obviously Robinho didn't really know much about English football. So when he was signed for Manchester City, I think it was £35 million at the time, which was a huge fee at the time for a
It was
player.
a massive signing. Yeah.
Massive, yeah, it was huge, huge signing. He arrived in Manchester and ended up going to Manchester City. He was quoted as saying afterwards, though, that he thought he was signing for Manchester United. I didn't know that there was another Manchester club. So apparently he didn't find out what club he was signing for until last minute, and he heard that he was going to Manchester. He just didn't know that Manchester had a second club, and that it was Manchester. Well, second club then, now first club, I guess you would say. He just didn't realise that Manchester City even existed because he thought he was signing for Manchester United. I just think that is one of the most hilarious instances of like miscommunication in the world. And he ultimately ended up playing for Manchester City and not saying no to it because he just thought he was signing for a different club entirely. It's just hilarious.
And
Hilarious.
he didn't do, or it wasn't a brilliant move as such, was it? If I remember
No, no,
right,
it
I
was
don't think
really
it's
poor.
not.
This was where Manchester City were spending their money really irresponsibly, and they had like players like Roque Santa Cruz, who even do you remember him,
Yeah,
on
yes.
like 150 grand a week or something at the time, which again was insane wages.
Like I said, it was a case of they came in and said, we are going to, I think it was right near the end of the transfer window as well. I think they said, we just
Yeah,
want to spend the most amount of money on a player. And yeah, like I said, 30 million was a huge amount then.
massive amount. But yeah, absolute fail. Fail on Robinho's side, fail on City's side as well, just because he just didn't really do anything like you said while he was at City. Just a hilarious story. And I do wonder if even the agent knew what he was doing, or whether or not the agent knew he was signing for City, knew that he wouldn't have wanted to have gone, but the fee was just too big and he was going to get too big of a cut.
Yeah, well, that was it. It's a fail on him and or his agent. But because, yeah, surely if you don't even know who you've signed for.
Just so trash. But yeah, that's my ending note. I feel like we could potentially do a part two on sporting fails because we only really touched the surface on some of like the American stuff that it's about, like your basketball pitching scandals and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a good one to end.
No, it was a great one to finish with. Anyone listening, if you've got any stories of scandals or big sporting failures or excuses, either side of the pond, let us know. Send them in or get in contact at castingviewspod@gmail.com, or you can get us on Twitter at castingviews. Lou, anything else from you before we go?
No, not apart from the fact that evidently they needed a better Google Translate app or translator app when they were performing that Robinho signing. But yeah, nothing more from me.
So yeah, so that's it for this week's episode. We'll have another episode out next week, and we know there's a lot of podcasts from which you can choose. So we thank you for listening to Casting Views.
2, 3, 4. If I want your opinion, I will give it to you. Come on, take what we got.